have that in your book. And so you need that real-time interaction to tease that out, and that's what we are focused on.
How to differentiate.
Right.
There's also the other thing is that goes back to someone who's asking about the mathematics, ninth grader looking. When you have a specific question, what is d over dx of 4x plus 5 or whatever, you can't necessarily find your specific answer on Wikipedia. But if you posted this here, there'll be people who will sort of walk you through it, and you can go back and say, oh, I didn't understand that, how did you get this? And I think that's kind of where we're finding the value.
Sandeep, you had a question.
Yeah, essentially, Ashwin, I'd like to understand what drives you.
What drives me, personally?
He wants to impress his wife.
My wife.
They drive you crazy.
Ooh.
Kaun bol raha tha?
We'll get him.
That's why.
We know where he lives. So what drives me is sort of this combination of, it's an opportunity where I can combine the research and the innovation aspects I talked about, right? The way I pick things to work on, I want to work on things that matter a lot to somebody. One way to measure that is someone willing to pay for this. It's not the only way to measure it, but that's a good test. I don't necessarily work for money necessarily for all the things I work on, but at least I want to have that in mind, that this needs to be a problem that really matters. If you look at the problems I worked on, games is a very, very big market that maybe it matters to kids, how important it is. Healthcare, things like education and so forth. So I want to work on problems that matter. I want to work on problems that are intellectually really deep, where the obvious solution is not going to work, and what is going to work isn't obvious, and it's not the same thing, right? So it's not something where I can go back to my lab and as a researcher, typically we do research in the lab and we think we've solved the problem. You take it back out in the real world and it turns out it doesn't really solve the real problem. So I want it to be sort of deep and not obvious. And then I want that ability to turn that back out and prove to myself that what I did actually had value to everyone. So it's really things that can complete that cycle, where if you look at that whole cycle, there's a lot of out-of-the-box thinking or innovative thinking, brainstorming required in even understanding the problem in the first place, and then obviously doing the new technology, doing the new research, and then figuring out how to apply it in a creative way. I think that's, when you look at some of the successes out there, some of them are quite surprising to us. It's quite surprising that something like Foursquare would succeed. It's actually perhaps more surprising that, I talked about World of Warcraft because everyone's heard of World of Warcraft. The largest gaming company is not Blizzard, right? It's Zynga. People know Zynga? Right? So more than half the population of Facebook plays Zynga games really religiously. They just launched Cityville as the fastest growing game ever in history. Went from 0 to 83 million users in 1 month. And this was a few weeks ago. So the thing is, it's not just a game. If you look at what's behind Zynga and its success, there's a lot of human psychology buried in the mechanics of these games. They really figured out what makes these games, right? So that's the depth that went into it. So I like problems like that. I like problems where there's some kind of depth needed to get that killer out. And so that, I get excited, I sink my teeth into those kinds of problems. Yeah, question? Let me get you, then I'll two in the back.
Actually, I had a question about what is the intercommunication model that you have, like net meeting, WebEx? Can you interact with those kind of softwares?
We do not interact with them.
Chat only?
So I'll tell you the history behind this. The very first version we released was essentially a WebEx clone. We based it on DimDim, if you've seen DimDim, which is a nicer version of WebEx and it's free. And it's open source, you can use it. So we based it on DimDim, so we had this thing, then we had DimDim on steroids, we had drawing and all kinds of fancy tools and so forth. And we found that 90% of the use was just the chat over on the site. Right? Remember the demographic. These kids they live their life on SMS and instant messenger, right? They want to chat. Now we do have some tools, like we have things like equation editors and things to type the math in, but by and large, they just want the chat. We had another version where we did audio video. Nobody used it, other than us professors. We wanted to lecture to the students. The students don't want to use it. So the product, in some sense, every successive release has had fewer features. Microsoft needs to learn a lesson from this. Every successful version has had fewer features, and every successive version has been more popular and more engagement, more user signing, because we're solving one problem and solving it really well. We're not trying to solve everything. So if you need to have a business meeting, right, there's WebEx. We don't want to do that here because the students don't want it. Now that being said, we are thinking about maybe embedding things like that as premium features that people might want to use. But that's really not what students are looking for. Okay, way back there.
I want to know a little more about the incentive plan. Let's say a professor is spending an hour every day on this website to answer all these questions. So is it just he's getting bragging rights about I am superstar, or there is some other incentive plan for him to invest his time because he could do so many other things?
Right. Right now, there's no other incentive plan. We have professors spending time on the site, but much more we have students spending time on the site helping each other. I'll give you an example. One of our most loyal users, in fact, he's so committed and so engaged, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution called him up to talk to him. And they ran him in the story that they ran. There's a biology student in Turkey who spends 45 minutes a day on open study helping people. Why is he doing that? You talk to him, he says, first, he likes helping. Secondly, he says, I learn stuff better by helping and explaining it to other people, so I'm learning better. And thirdly, he is building a hell of a network for himself, because professors have noticed him, deans have noticed him, other people are like, who is this kid? And now he's getting ready he helped out. So one of the interesting things about the MIT and other open courseware, 40% of their demographic are independent professionals. They're not students. They're folks like us who want to learn something different, want to change their career, want to advance their career. So he helped somebody out who was some senior software manager in Electronic Arts, which is a major software games company. And now that guy is like, hey, can we hire you? So these people the students are helping each other and getting a lot of value from this. There are professors online and they're doing it for the love of teaching. But really it's students helping students. And that's how we get the scalability. Remember the 300 million people who need education. We're not going to have enough professors to teach them. But there are plenty of those students to teach each other. So that's what we focus on.